Community Matters.
Welcome back here to hmTV. My name is Richard Acritelli here on the Fog of War and Humanity. For our second episode with Mr. Gary Port, we are talking about some of the complexities of PTSD with combat veterans coming home, getting readjusted, and falling on some difficult criminal time periods or the need to have, legal representation. So, Gary, what were you kind of mentioning before?
Well, we were talking about, in my role as chair of the New York State Bar Association Veterans Committee, I try to educate lawyers on how to deal with veteran clients. And we were talking, one of the big issues, which something which I think is very important, is the Veteran Treatment Court. Having a criminal background myself, I understand there's the difference between how certain people commit crimes or why they commit crimes. And certain veterans have problems, and that's why the Veteran Treatment Court is important, but also having attorneys that understand how to deal with the veteran as a person. I'd like to shift gears a little bit and get away from that sort of heavy stuff and talk about the work I'm doing now with the New York State Elder Law Committee. They reached out to me to do a program on how we help our older veterans. And what's very interesting, what a lot of people don't realize, is the word veteran depends upon your type of service. So, for example, I was on active duty during the 80s, which makes me a Cold War veteran. And I carry in my wallet my Empire State Pass. I get to go to every state park for free as a Cold War veteran. I get a Cold War veteran exemption on my property taxes. My law partner was not a Cold War veteran. He was in Djibouti during the global war on terror, and now he is a PAC victim. In other words, he's burn pit victim.
Okay.
So he is a different type of veteran. I'm also a retiree, which means I get other benefits as a retiree that, for example, you were a reserve veteran.
For 9 years, yes.
Okay. But if you didn't do 180 days on active duty, you're not considered a veteran for certain federal purposes, and you don't get PX and commissary privileges. I did 3 years of active duty, 25 years of reserve duty. I get PX and commissary privileges as well as medical.
Sure.
So it depends who you are. Plus, because I'm a lieutenant colonel who retired, I get to be buried above ground at a national cemetery. You don't have a DD-214, which is a discharge certificate for those people who served 180 days or more. You don't get to be buried at a national cemetery. On the other hand, both you and I, if we become very ill, we can't go to the state nursing home for veterans because I'm not combat injured, you're not combat injured. My law partner, however, because he's a burn pit victim, if some point later in his life he needs to go into the state nursing home, he can go into the state nursing home because he is that type of veteran. So what I'm working on with the New York State Bar Association Elder Law Committee is teaching the elder law attorneys what they need to ask when they're brought in and said, okay, here's my mom or here's my dad or here's me. What do I need to know?
What's the biggest questions they have of you?
Well, the first question is, what? I have no idea where even to start. So what I'm telling the attorneys is the first thing you do is request their full military records. Find out what their service was. Find out whether or not they were in a combat zone. Also get their VA records. Not everyone makes a VA request. Now, me personally, no injuries whatsoever. I am 100% healthy, never got injured at all in the service. My son did 4 years, came out as a captain. He's 50% disabled.
Wow.
The minute he came out, he already had his paperwork in, and he got his...
He's got a little bit more of a paper trail, right?
He had dad.
Yeah.
When he got injured, dad's immediately, okay, make sure you document everything.
Sure.
So he had everything documented, and he's good to go. So now let's say you have a situation where, let's say you've got a parent who is a veteran. They're older, and now you want to do estate planning for them.
What group of veterans are you seeing more today? Vietnam veterans or?
It's all over. because it depends on the nature of the injuries
Okay.
and nature of the age. I mean, for you personally, a guy at your age, it would be you'd be trying to help your parents who are Vietnam era,
Sure.
or even Korean War era. For younger people, millennials, they may be doing it for themselves, trying to get their stuff organized. But if you're
And would that, you think, be more like Gulf War, War on Terror?
yeah, we're
sort of
talking
thing?
Gulf War, GWAT, Iraqi freedom, all that stuff that's happened over the last 25 years. And so now the question is, what are the benefits? Okay, if you've got an older parent who is a veteran, you may be interested, can I get them buried in a national cemetery? Because do you know how much a funeral costs? It is an insane amount of money.
Sure.
But on the other hand, if you know your old man is sitting there with a DD-214 because he was a Korean War vet, woo, bonus. Dad gets buried for free.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk off my
Plus
back.
in a well-kept area and, with other peers that he might have been in that age group with as well, right?
Or what if they need to go into a nursing home?
Sure.
New York State has programs to assist. Here's something else that New York State has. And this is something I'm going to be talking to the business law folks. If you were a disabled veteran, New York State has money to give you to start a business. This is a great program, and they keep pushing it, and each year they do not spend all the money. So if you're a disabled veteran and you want to start a business, Governor Hochul will write a check to you.
Wow. It's a pretty positive, good program, right?
It's an outstanding program, but and we're trying to get people out there. And for those people here on the island, go to the Michael Murphy Museum. We just set up a kiosk. By we, I mean New York State just set up a kiosk.
That's where I met you a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So they set up a kiosk where you can go there and figure out all this veteran stuff.
Do you find that some of the older veterans have a hard time accessing the information on the computers?
It depends. I mean, I think it's...
Have they made it user-friendly? I mean, you just said the kiosk, but...
Well, you saw it too. The kiosk
Yeah.
looks pretty cool. I mean, the whole idea was they made it look really good. The program must be doing great because I think that was the 16th kiosk they put up in the state. But different people have different levels of competency.
Sure.
I'm incredibly computer literate. I do a lot of stuff with the computer, do a lot of stuff with AI, do programming, coding.
So you're a guy, you just keep on learning. That's the thing. It's...
It depends on the person.
Yeah.
I've run into a lot of older people who are very sharp on computers. But then there's also people who are younger. We have Gen Z who don't know how to operate anything. So we're trying to make the stuff as easy as possible and trying to get the information out as in many different ways as possible because there's too much information, too many organizations, and no centralized way to pull this all together. That's why at the state level with the bar, I'm working to educate attorneys because attorneys are people go to get information.
Okay.
I also work with the Association of the United States Army, AUSA, which is a great organization. It primarily focuses on active and reserve and guard as opposed to the VSOs, the Veteran Service Organizations like American Legion. But those are also veterans.
Now, you're retired. When did you retire from the Army itself, the reserves itself?
January 1, 2015.
Okay, so that's about 8 years ago, right? Or no, 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Wow. Okay. And how did you get into this post now?
The Army Reserve Ambassador?
Yeah.
Well, the prior Army Reserve Ambassador, a guy named Mike Berman, Colonel Berman, he decided he was going to take what's called the emeritus position. And he calls me up and he says, Gary, I'm taking emeritus on the ambassador position. Put your packet in. I want you to take over for me. So I put my packet in. I was interviewed by the 99th Regional Readiness Division. My packet was then sent.
Where are they out of?
They're out of Dix.
Okay.
Then my packet was approved and was sent up to the commander of the Army Reserve, who then approved it. That was...
Now, is that a commander statewide or is that commander federal?
That is the
overall commander.
Yeah, we call him the CAR, Commander Army Reserve. The CAR is the 3-star general who commands all of the Army Reserve.
Throughout the whole country, huh?
All Army Reserve belongs to the CAR. So the CAR then appointed me.
And do they keep an eye on the reservists that are sent overseas in various bases?
If you wear the Army Reserve uniform, well, we all wear the same uniform. If you're Army Reserve, you belong to the car.
Wow. And they're supposed to look out for you. Right?
Well, that's his job. The car's job is to keep track of the Army Reserve. It's one of the pillars. We have the active component, the reserve component, the guard component, and the civilian component. And there's a fifth component, and I apologize. It's the 5 tiers, and I'm forgetting the 5th tier, but regardless. So the Army Reserve we call it Compo 3. Compo 1 is AC, Compo 2 is guard, Compo 3 is reserve.
Wow. And what is your day-to-day operations that you do?
Well, I have my regular job in my law firm, but I appear and go around and raise the flag for the reserves. Unfortunately, this week I was recovering something, so I had other people cover for me. On Monday, we had the 333rd MP Company out at Farmingdale go on deployment. Yesterday, the the Recruiting Command for New York, which covers basically Westchester to Montauk, they had a change of command in the city. So we have a new lieutenant colonel who is now handling all Army recruiting, active and reserve, for this 8-county region. So I was supposed to go to that. Sadly, I missed that, but I'm going to be meeting up with him again because he's now put me on a committee to assist him in his recruiting activities. And in fact, his predecessor and I were very close. Last year, I was at the big Army conference down in D.C., the AUSA conference. Anytime any major Army policy is announced, it's announced at an AUSA conference. I'm sitting there. Secretary of the Army gets up there, and she says, last year, this is October 2024. So October 2024, she says, we set our sights at 50,000 new soldiers. We did it. I am now announcing that we are setting it to 55,000. And I immediately text the commander for the area, and I said, John, Sec Army just announced 55,000. And he immediately texts back, oh, shit.
Is that seen as a lot? Is that
55,000 is huge? You have to understand that we were having problems with recruiting. Part of the problem was COVID resulted in lower ASVAB scores, which is the Army entrance exam,
sure, the exam,
as well as resulting in obesity. We were having significant problems. And the Army looked around and they saw Major General Johnny Davis. Johnny is amazing. I can't say enough amazing things about Johnny, who's now a lieutenant general. And they said, Johnny, you're going to fix recruiting. I spoke to Johnny a month after he had gotten into position, and he already had great ideas. Under Johnny, we have blown the doors off recruiting.
So that 55,000 is certainly attainable.
Oh, I think we may have already beaten it. And again, Johnny, I want to say, when did Johnny come on board? 2022, 23. So now, but let me tell you one of the things that he did. And again, this shows you how forward-thinking the Army can be. Here's the problem. You sign up and sign the contract. You get off the bus. Well, before you even get on the bus, you got to pass the test. You got to pass height and weight. You got to pass all this other stuff to get on the bus to get down to basic. Well, we had a whole group of people that were borderline. So they came up with...
At Hamilton, in terms of...
Well, yeah.
Right?
In our local area, it would be at Hamilton, which is called the Medical Entrance Processing Station.
Was that MEPS?
Yep. MEPS. So what they did was they set up a program where if you were borderline, you're going to go down south. I believe it's at Fort Jackson. And we're going to put you in a pre-basic basic. Okay, you can't pass the ASVAB now? Not a problem. Can't pass Itemway? Not a problem. We're going to send you down south. We're going to give you remedial training on both. This was 2022, 23. It was phenomenal.
Now, did they get the full military treatment, or was it a little bit? Did they lay off a little bit just to get them to that point?
It wasn't basic.
It wasn't basic.
It was, we're going to get you to basic. And the program was run as a pilot. It was so successful.
We're going to give you a little discipline along the ways, right?
Yeah. So successful that they had a pass rate that I believe was in excess of 90%. They then stopped making it a pilot program and made it a permanent program.
They called that remedial PT, but you had to go through it and fail And then they gave you the remedial PT, which was kind of
like what we did when you were in service, but this was different. These people weren't in the service yet. They were conditionally in the service. And this program that the Army instituted was phenomenal. This allowed us to close that gap, and that, because I remember in 21, we had this huge problem. I was involved in a lot of meetings where they were discussing, what are we going to do? And one of the things they did in 21 was they started doing serious market research. Who are our people? And they created 7 segments of society, looking at the 7 different segments. Segment 1, do you have a family member who's in the military? You are more likely to join the military. And unfortunately, we call ourselves the 1%. If you're in the military, you're more likely to have someone that in your family is going to join the military as well, which is a problem. The Pentagon level does not like that. We want to broaden it out. We don't want to have a warrior class. Then we had second tiers, third tier, fourth tier, all the way down to these 7 tiers. And using this market research.
What were some of those tiers? People from the inner city, people from the country, people like yourself who went through college and then became military? Was it different?
Basically looking at those different types of demographics. And again, as you went down the tiers, you were least likely to join the military. So they were looking, and they did this sort of like a pyramid, and they're trying to broaden the base out, because what the Pentagon wants, and this is our belief for the longest time, is our military must be broadly based. It cannot be based upon a very narrow group of people. And so one of the things that happened, this was in 2023. Yes, it was 23. I was at the AUSA conference in 23.
And COVID was more or less done,
yeah,
I guess, at that time, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much more or less done.
Yeah.
And what happened was the Army announced that they were reorganizing the Army Enterprise Program. And basically what they did was they took recruiting and marketing and they put them together into a single command underneath the, I think it was the TRADOC commander. And I do apologize. I didn't realize I was going to take a test on this stuff.
No, that's all right.
But anyway.
You're doing well on the exam, I'll tell you that, you know.
So what the idea was, the Army Enterprise Marketing, I went to their seminar, was they said, okay, we have to reach Gen Z the way Gen Z gets their information. And so we're targeting Gen Z with various types of social media that they will go with.
Now, me being a teacher and a professor, right? What are the ways that you've been doing it? Online, more TV? Because I've seen a lot more on TV now with the reserve.
With regard to this particular program that Army Enterprise Marketing was doing, it was online stuff geared demographically. And one of the presenters got up there. This was in the Warrior Corner during the conference, which is on the main floor where we have the convention. And she got up there and she said, how many of you people here have seen any of these videos? No one raised their hand. And she says, good, because you're not our audience.
Wow.
And the people who were there were people like me, older people, generals, colonels, all older folks. And we were not seeing, and I still don't see any of this because it's not in any of my
because
feeds.
of your age, right? And where you are in life, you're going against the opposite.
Right. So
16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old
So
kids.
they were studying the algorithms so carefully that they were able to ensure that, and the term that they use in the search engine optimization field is called a funnel, they were making sure that the funnels were dealing with this demographic. I'm not in that funnel, so I'm not seeing that information.
Wow.
And again, all these things that they did, and the Pentagon did it great.
Did they start wiring you into some of that information? And
yes, as the Army Reserve Ambassador, I have to be part of it because I am part of the recruiting process. I work closely with the Army Recruiting Command. I work very closely with Cadet Command, which is the folks that do ROTC.
Now, there's something I see in my school, and I didn't realize this. I went in at this time 31 years ago in 1994. I went to Fort Hamilton, swore in on July 5th. I shipped out almost 2 months later. I never thought about not going into Fort Hamilton and not going with the next step, right? I went to basic down in Leonardwood and AIT.
Fort Lawson the Wood?
Fort Lawson the Woods, right? Now, I always talk to the recruiters during like lunch duty. And I always ask them, they're younger guys. I talk to them and, I know they rank a little bit. And, I ask them what problems you have. And sometimes they'll say, we get these guys, we get them through the process, we do their paperwork, we spend all this time and resources on them, and then they pull out at the last moment.
That has been a problem, but it has gotten better.
So and I was shocked because I forgot that I had sworn in again. In the back of my mind, I was going and that was it.
Well, here's some of the things that we're trying to do.
But that's a problem though, right?
It was more of a problem than it is now. And part of it also is we understand, we being the military, we try to make it a big deal now. For example, we had an event at Times Square where we had, and I'm going to use a little mil-speak, SOCOM was there. SOCOM is a 4-star general who is in charge of all special forces across all of the branches. So he's got SF, he's got SEALs, he's got them all. One of the baddest asses guys I ever met. I mean, this guy he was so cool too.
And people are amazed by that.
So we had this event in Times Square. SOCOM was there. 30 new soldiers were sworn in by SOCOM. And then so we had this whole big thing at Times Square, 30 new soldiers, and then SOCOM personally hands them a coin, speaks to each one of them, shakes every one of their hand. It was a big deal. We had another ceremony recently. Fort Hamilton celebrated its 200th anniversary. And it was just the day before the birthday of the Army.
Okay.
So at Fort Hamilton, we had a whole big event there, and we had a 1-star general come out there, and she swore in about 40 new soldiers. So we're trying to make this whole thing a big deal. Instead of being in that sweaty, like what you did. You were at MEPS, sweaty
doing a
little
duck
room.
walk for 4 hours and hopping up and down on one leg and,
Your swearing in was not something that you remember as a memorable event. We're trying to make these swearing-ins a memorable, and I go there as the Army Reserve Ambassador, and what I do, and I'm going to do it to you right now.
Oh, you got a coin for me?
Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Colonel. Appreciate it.
So we give out, I give out the coins when I go to these events, and I say, you're going to go down to basic, and you're going to be the only guy there. Even your drill sergeants may not have this. That's a 2-star coin. I'm a 2-star. You have a 2-star coin, which your drill sergeant doesn't have. They're going to be jealous of you.
Is that your rank for the position that you have now?
As an Army Reserve Ambassador, I'm what is called a courtesy 2-star.
Now, do you have like a term limit, or what's the deal? Enlistment?
It's a 3-year obligation, and I'm now into my 3rd term.
Okay.
I really enjoy doing it. It is a very fulfilling position because I get to work with soldiers. I go to events. I represent the CAR, the Commander of the Army Reserve, but I also introduce people. As I joke, I don't know everything, but I know everybody.
Your dad, did he see? I mean, he's a World War II guy, so he's older. I mean,
well, he's dead now. He died in 2000. Away. He died in 2000.
But he saw some of your military career.
Yeah, he the last rank he saw for me was major.
Wow.
He died, I would probably say it was 2 years before I made lieutenant colonel. I made lieutenant colonel in 2002. He died in 2000.
I would have to think in terms of your education, your law, and then the military. I mean, he had a lot to be proud of.
Oh, he was very proud of me. He was always very proud that his son was an officer where he was only a PFC. It's a shame that he didn't get to see me, move on and now have this position. As an Army Reserve Ambassador, it's kind of cool. I get served by generals, and I get to hang out with generals. And when you were in your level as a PFC, you only saw the foxhole, okay? And when you talk to veterans who only did the lower enlisted, they have a very low view. What a lot of folks don't realize, and you know this as well.
You see a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain.
To be an officer, you have to have a college degree. To be a lieutenant colonel, you have to have 2 degrees. Most generals are PhDs, and most generals that I've run in are multiple PhDs.
Sure.
there is not a single full colonel that only has a bachelor's.
Along with the education, like command and general staff and war college.
You
and
have to
everything.
be at least a PhD or have to a master's. But most colonels have PhDs. Most generals have multiple.
Amazing.
So we have, and because they're higher educated, their vision is much wider. So when you're a lower enlisted, you only see that hill that they're telling you to take. The general is looking at the geopolitical implications of taking that hill. I was, last year at the big Army conference, I was sitting with the commander of European forces, who used to be the superintendent of West Point. And he's sitting there with just a group of us, giving us his view on Putin. Amazing. And his brilliance on the subject, because he is in charge of all European forces for America. Doesn't make a difference.
Where would he be based out of? Germany?
Yeah. He was in Germany, and anyone that's military, he owned, even though he was a 4-star Army general. And his breadth and understanding was amazing. And again, former superintendent of West Point as well. So these guys, as they move up in rank, have wider and wider and wider vision. And we're fortunate that we have an incredibly educated military force. And as an Army Reserve ambassador, it is really humbling for me to be served by people like them.
Well, you have a little of everything in terms of your own background. Your father being in the service.
Dude, I was just a jag. I'm no hero.
But in terms of your ability to talk, you could communicate with a lot of different people in terms of your own education, your own military experience, your son being in the service, your dad serving during World War II.
My talent is translation.
Yeah.
Because I'm a trial attorney, I translate well. But I get humbled when I talk to people like SOCOM, or I talk to people like UCOM, or even Lieutenant General Johnny Davis, who I just have the highest regard for. And these folks treat me with respect, which, I almost have an imposter syndrome, because to my mind, all I do is I support heroes. I'm not a hero. I support heroes. These folks are heroes. These guys and gals are phenomenal. I've run into some absolutely amazing soldiers in my time. And it is really humbling that in my role as an Army Reserve ambassador, they look upon me with respect. My attitude is, I represent you, okay? My role as an Army Reserve ambassador is a reflection of you. It's not my glory. It's not my respect. I don't want that.
Do you ever go down to any of the basic training or AIT graduations where you might see a group that you might have worked with or seen?
There's funding issues always. Sometimes they give us funding to do stuff. Sometimes they don't.
Okay.
There are some things that they were planning on having us do and go to certain places, and then the funding got cut off at the last minute. This is a volunteer position. I don't get paid for it. But if they're going to send me someplace, they will pay for it. And unfortunately, we recognize that the Army Reserve Ambassador Program, while it's important, it's not as important as some of the other programs that we are doing. And if we have to take the cut on the funding, we'll take the cut, because we have other things that are more important to do.
Okay. Well, Gary, thank you for coming down here to hmTV. I could talk to you all day. I'd like to have you back again. And it was a pleasure having you.
Okay,
thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Gary, you're like a